When I saw my son's bride walk down the aisle, something deep in my chest shifted, not joy, not pride, but an ache I couldn't quite name. Her name was Lena. My son, Ethan, had known her since grade school. I used to pack them both sandwiches when they spent summers catching tadpoles by the creek. Back then, she was the girl with scraped knees and an infectious laugh, the kind of laugh that filled a whole room. So when Ethan told me he was marrying her, my heart leaped. It felt like life coming full circle. But that day in the church, as the music swelled, I caught her eyes for a moment. She smiled, sweet, composed, but behind the veil, I saw something else. A flicker, a heaviness. I told myself I was imagining it. Every bride gets nervous. Every mother feels protective. Still, as she reached the altar and took my son's hand, my palms went cold. Before all of this, before the whispers, the secrets, the heartbreak, life was simple. Ethan was my only child. After his father passed from a heart attack when Ethan was 16, it had just been the two of us. We weren't rich, but we had enough. I ran a small bakery in town, Maris oven. Every morning, the smell of cinnamon rolls filled our little kitchen before sunrise. Ethan used to sit on the counter, dipping his finger into the icing bowl, pretending not to. He grew into a good man, quiet, patient, kind, the kind that listens more than he speaks, the kind that holds the door even when you're still a few steps away. When he brought Lena home one evening, I remember wiping flour off my hands and smiling. "Well, look at you two," I said, pretending not to notice how close they stood. Lena had grown into a beautiful young woman, soft brown eyes, a delicate voice, a way of tilting her head when she listened that made you feel important. She hugged me tightly that night. "I've missed you, Mrs. Hale," she said. "It feels like coming home." And in that moment, I truly believed her. The months that followed were busy, happy ones, wedding plans, cake tastings, guest lists, scribbled on napkins. Lena would stop by the bakery after work to help me frost cupcakes, humming while I piped buttercream roses. "Ethan's lucky," I told her once. She looked up from her work and smiled faintly. "No, I'm lucky," she said, but her eyes flicked away quickly, as if the words carried a weight she couldn't set down. I brushed it off. Everyone has a past. Everyone has memories they don't share easily. Sometimes, though, when she thought I wasn't looking, I'd catch her staring out the window, lost, distant, as if she were listening for a sound that never came. The wedding was small and sweet, just how Ethan wanted. Our old neighbors, a few of his college friends, and Lena's aunt and uncle. I noticed she didn't have many people from her side, no parents, no siblings, just that older couple who looked kind but kept mostly to themselves. Her parents passed years ago, Ethan told me gently when I asked. "She doesn't talk about it much." I nodded, feeling guilty for asking. After the ceremony, when everyone was laughing and dancing, I found myself standing by the window, looking out at the night sky. The moon hung low and orange, and the sound of their laughter drifted behind me. I should have felt at peace, but something felt off. A mother's intuition, maybe, or just nerves. Still, I couldn't shake it. A few weeks after the wedding, they moved into a small house on Elm Street, cozy, 2 bedrooms, a little garden in the back. Ethan painted the porch himself. Lena planted roses. I visited every Sunday with a basket of pastries. We'd sit at their kitchen table drinking coffee, talking about work, life, little things, but the warmth I expected, that easy openness, wasn't quite there. Lena was polite, loving even, but guarded. She smiled, laughed at my jokes, but her phone was always nearby, face down. Once, when she excused herself to take a call, I caught a glimpse of her expression, a mix of worry and tenderness. When she returned, I asked casually, "Everything all right?" She nodded quickly. "Just a friend from work," she said, too fast. Ethan didn't seem to notice. He was head over heels, and I didn't want to be the meddling mother-in-law, so I smiled and changed the subject. Weeks turned into months. Seasons changed. Then one afternoon, it happened. I was in the bakery when a young boy walked in, maybe 5, maybe 6 years old, mop of curly hair, eyes the same soft brown as Lena's. He clutched a crumpled napkin in his hand. "Hi, sweetie," I said, leaning down. "Are you lost?" He shook his head. "My aunt said I could buy a cookie." I smiled, sliding a chocolate chip one across the counter. "Who's your aunt?" He pointed toward the window, and there, across the street, half hidden behind a parked car, was Lena. She wasn't waving. She wasn't smiling. She was watching. When our eyes met, she froze, then turned and walked quickly away. I remember staring after her, the bell above the door still jingling, the boy's little hand gripping his cookie. In that moment, the first thread of doubt began to pull loose. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of that boy haunted me, the way his eyes mirrored hers, the way she'd turned away instead of explaining. Maybe it was nothing, I told myself. Maybe she was just helping a friend. But in my gut, I knew. There was a secret, something she hadn't told Ethan. Something that could tear everything apart. And as much as I wanted to protect my son, part of me already feared what finding out might do to him. Still, I couldn't unsee that little boy, and I couldn't forget the way Lena's face had gone pale when she realized I'd seen him. I knew I had to find out the truth, for Ethan's sake, and for my own peace of mind. But what I discovered was far more complicated and heartbreaking than I could have ever imagined. It was a secret born from love, loss, and a promise that had bound Lena long before she ever said "I do" to my son, and unearthing it would change all of our lives forever. The next morning, I tried to fold doubt into the quiet rhythm of my life. Flour, water, yeast, sugar, the small alchemy that makes a loaf rise whether your heart is steady or trembling. The mixer word, customers, drifted in, and I handed over warm bread, pretending not to replay the little boy's face each time the bell above the door chimed. By mid-afternoon, the bell rang again. It was Lena, my son Ethan's partner. She stood in the doorway, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "I was nearby," she said, "and thought I'd say hello." We made small talk over coffee, but a stillness filled with things unsaid hung between us. "How are you, and Ethan?" I asked. "We're good," she said softly. "He's happy." I thought about asking her about the little boy from yesterday, the one who said his aunt told him he could buy a cookie. I mentioned him gently. Lena's grip tightened on her cup. "Oh," she said, her voice thin. "I didn't know." I saw a muscle jump in her jaw. I could have pushed, but I let it go. She left with a bag of die-old scones, and the kitchen felt colder than before. That night, sleep was thin and broken, my throat tight with the salt of what I hadn't said. 3 days later, I was getting a delivery of eggs from Mrs. Fallon. She's a talker. "You know who I saw at the clinic the other day?" she said. "That lovely girl of your Ethan's, Lena." My hand tightened on the doorframe. "She was in pediatrics," Mrs. Fallon went on, "sweet with the little one she was with. Her sister's baby, I think. Pediatrics." A tiny thread of air left my lungs. When she left, I stood there for a long time, my heart beating an erratic rhythm against my ribs. That evening, I told myself I was just taking the long way home. But the truth was, I wanted to see. I drove down Elm Street. Ethan's little house sat quiet, white curtains drawn. Then I saw her, framed in the window. Lena. Her body was tipped to one side, her cheek tilted down, murmuring something I couldn't hear. And then, a small hand rose into the window frame and patted clumsily at her shoulder. I pulled over and killed the engine. The world went still. A woman stepped out of the house, carrying a diaper bag. "Can I help you?" she asked, seeing my car. "I'm Mara," I said, my voice thick. "Ethan's mother." Recognition crossed her face. "I help Lena sometimes," she said carefully, "with childcare." Childcare. The word hung in the air. A minute later, Lena stepped onto the porch, her arms empty now. "Mara," she called, "what are you doing here?" "I was passing through," I said. It sounded thin, even to me. "Do you want to come in?" she asked. "Is Ethan home?" "No," she said. A heavy silence gathered at our feet. "I should go," I finally said. As I pulled away, her hand was a small, pale shape against the growing dark. The next afternoon, Ethan called, cheerful and oblivious. Lena's been craving your lemon bars. He said, "You okay, Mom? You sound like you've been crying." "Dust," I lied. "I'm fine." That evening, I baked the bars, cutting them into perfect squares, the small dignity of the task soothing something in me. On Sunday, I delivered them. Lena answered the door. The house smelled faintly of baby powder. From a room down the hall, I heard a soft cooing, then a rhythmic shushing sound. "New neighbor?" I asked, my smile steady. Lena's gaze shot to mine and away. "Something like that," she said. We stood in the kitchen, the silence stretching. "You can ask me," she said finally, her voice low. "If you want." A woman, the same one I saw before, appeared in the archway, nodded to us both, and left. The house settled again. Lena turned to the sink. "There are parts of my life I never told Ethan," she said, not looking at me. My heart clenched. "Then tell me," I whispered. "Tell me, before it eats us all." She lifted her head, her fist pressed to her mouth. "Not here," she said. "Tomorrow, the park by the creek. 7. I'll be there." I nodded. As I left, a draft pushed the hallway door open just a sliver. I didn't move toward it. I didn't need to. A soft hiccuping cry stitched itself into the air, a sound that unspooled something deep inside my chest. In my car, I stared at the neat white picket fence until it blurred. Tomorrow, I told myself. Tomorrow. The air the next evening was thick with humidity, the kind that clings to your skin and settles in your lungs. I parked at the far side of the creek park, where the trees loomed like watchful sentinels. It was quiet. The world had slowed down for the night, the sun sinking behind a band of clouds, leaving the sky bruised and heavy. I'd dressed carefully, like you do when you're preparing for a conversation that's long overdue. Something about the silence of the park made it seem even more important, as if nature itself was holding its breath for what I might hear. I checked my watch, 5 minutes to 7. I couldn't help but feel the weight of this moment pressing against my ribs. I had no idea what Lena would say, no idea what truth she was about to unveil. I only knew one thing for certain. Nothing would ever be the same after tonight. The bench near the creek was empty when I arrived. The water murmured softly over the rocks, the sound almost comforting. I took a deep breath, watching the ripples glide across the surface. I hadn't been here in years. Ethan used to love this place when he was little. He would throw sticks into the water and wait for them to float away. Like sending wishes downstream, he'd say, laughing. And now here I was, sitting on that same bench, waiting for something that could very well be the end of all my wishes. My heart pounded as I glanced toward the path leading into the park. I didn't have to wait long. Lena appeared from behind the trees, her steps slow but deliberate. The same cautious air I'd seen before was in her movements now, like she was steeling herself for something. Her face was pale in the fading light, her eyes wary but not surprised. She was waiting for me to speak, but I didn't know what words could fit this moment. I stood as she approached, my hands clasped together in front of me. I tried to keep my voice steady, but I could hear the tremor there. "Lena, what's going on?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. "What have you been hiding from Ethan? From all of us?" She looked at me for a long moment, as if trying to decide how much to reveal, how much to trust. Finally, she exhaled, the breath shaking. "I never wanted to hurt him," she whispered. "But sometimes, secrets have a way of coming out, don't they?" I nodded, though my stomach twisted. "I need to know, for his sake, for all our sakes." Lena looked down, her fingers fidgeting with the strap of her bag. She seemed to hesitate before she spoke again, as if the words were a great weight that had been pressing against her chest for too long. "I had a child," she said softly, "before I met Ethan. A little boy. His name is Isaac." I felt a sudden jolt in my chest, as if the ground had shifted beneath me. My hands tightened around the bench. "You have a son?" I asked, almost in disbelief. "And you never told Ethan? You never told any of us?" She flinched at the accusation, her voice cracking. "I didn't know how. It was It was complicated. His father, Isaac's father, was never in the picture. I raised him on my own for a while, but it wasn't easy. And then, she stopped, her voice faltering. And then what? I pressed, unable to hold back. What happened to him? Lena wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I had to give him up for adoption. The word struck me like a slap. You gave your son away? I asked, the disbelief clawing at my throat. Not because I wanted to, Lena whispered, but because I didn't have a choice. I was young, alone, and I thought it was the only way to give him a better life. Her voice trembled with the weight of her confession. I never told Ethan. I never told anyone. It's been a secret I've carried for years, and I thought I could bury it. But now it's all coming back, and I don't know what to do. I took a step back, my heart pounding in my ears. The pieces were falling into place, but they made no sense. Why didn't you tell Ethan? Why didn't you tell him before the wedding? Before you married him? My voice was rising, not out of anger, but out of confusion and hurt. Lena shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks now. I was afraid, she said. I thought if he knew, he'd leave me. I thought he'd never accept me or Isaac, and I couldn't bear the thought of losing him. I wanted to be the woman he thought I was, not the woman I used to be. I felt my chest tighten, my throat raw. This wasn't just about a secret. This was about a life, a child, a decision that had haunted her for years, and now it was all coming to light. So Isaac is ... Is he around? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Lena nodded, swallowing hard. Yes, he's here, Mara. He's been living with me for the past 6 months. I've been trying to find a way to tell Ethan, but I didn't know how. The pieces clicked together, though they didn't form a picture I wanted to see. Lena had kept her son hidden from Ethan, and now that I knew, I realized how deep this betrayal ran. She hadn't just kept a secret. She had kept a life, a child, locked away in the shadows. Ethan had married a woman with a past, but more than that, he'd married a woman who had lied to him about the very foundation of her life. Lena wiped her eyes again, the sobs racking her shoulders now. I don't want to lose him, Mara. I love Ethan, but Isaac ... He's my son. I never wanted to keep them apart, but I was terrified of what would happen if they knew. And now, I can't keep lying. The silence between us stretched, heavy and suffocating. The creek burbled nearby, indifferent to the weight of Lena's confession. I could feel my heart breaking for Herifer, the pain of her choices, but also for Ethan, who would have to carry the weight of this truth, the lies, the omissions, the child who had been left in the shadows. I swallowed the lump in my throat. You have to tell him, Lena, I said, my voice firm. You have to tell Ethan the truth, before this secret destroys everything. It's the only way for him to really know you, the real you, and the only way for him to understand what's been hiding in the dark. Lena nodded, wiping her face, her hands trembling. I will. I promise. I'll tell him. I just needed to tell you first. The air around us felt heavy, full of unsaid things. I stood there, watching her, my mind racing. How would Ethan react when he learned the truth? Would he feel the weight of the deception as I did? And how would this change everything between them, between all of us? For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The evening light faded completely, leaving only the pale glow of streetlights along the path. I wanted to tell Lena that it would all be okay, that love and honesty could fix anything, but the truth was, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if this could be fixed, or if everything would unravel. But one thing was clear. The truth was coming, and there was no turning back. What do you think will happen next? The past few days were a blur. I just couldn't shake Lena's confession from my mind. A son, Isaac, hidden for years. How could she keep this from Ethan, from all of us? But then, I had to stop myself. Who was I to judge? I understood fear. I know what it's like to want something or someone so badly that you terrified that truth might just shatter everything. I wasn't proud of how I'd been acting, just pacing my kitchen, my thoughts racing every time I looked at Ethan, at his trusting eyes. This secret felt like a heavy weight, just waiting to drop. The whole situation was like walking a tightrope, knowing you have to jump eventually but dreading the fall. Ethan had been distant, too. Not physically, but I could feel it. He'd send a text instead of calling, or cancel our coffee dates for work stuff. That wasn't like him. I saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the slight slump in his shoulders when he came home. I couldn't help but wonder if he sensed something was wrong. It all came to a head on Saturday. I was about to bake some cookies for him, hoping to lift his spirits, when my phone buzzed. It was Lena. "Can you meet me? I need help." It's time to tell him, but I can't do it alone. My heart just stopped. I wiped the flour from my hands, my head pounding. I had to go. I couldn't let her face this by herself, not after she trusted me. If this was the moment she was finally going to tell Ethan, I had to be there. I had to be a witness, to support her through it. But as I walked out the door, this cold wave of doubt washed over me. What if he found out before she was ready? What if this truth didn't fix things, but instead tore them completely apart? I met Lena at a little coffee shop on the edge of town, a place where we wouldn't be seen. She was already there, huddled in a corner, her hands wrapped around a mug. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were bloodshot, but there was a new resolve in her posture. She had made her decision. "You're sure?" I asked her. Sitting down, "This is what you want." She looked right at me, and I saw the full weight of her choice in her eyes. "I have too," she said. "I love him too much to keep lying. I don't want to lose him, but I can't live in fear anymore." I nodded, my own heart aching with the gravity of it all. "Then we need to tell him together. He deserves the truth, Lena." She took a deep breath. "I know." We sat there in silence, the future feeling so heavy between us. I thought about Ethan, how his face would light up when he talked about their life together. He believed in her. He trusted her completely. How would he react? Would he be angry, betrayed, or would he find it in his heart to understand the pain she'd carried for so long? Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Ethan. "Hey Mom, I need to talk to you about something. Can you meet me at the house?" A cold rush of fear went through me. This was it. He knew something was up. My stomach twisted into a knot. I showed Lena the message. She looked up, her face mirroring my own worry. "He knows," she whispered. "He knows something." I squeezed her hand, trying to calm the storm of emotions inside me. "Let's go," I said. "We'll face it together." When we got to Ethan's house, the porch light was on, casting a soft glow on the quiet street. The air itself felt thick, heavy with everything that was about to be said. I took one last, deep breath and knocked. The door opened almost immediately. Ethan stood there, looking so tired, but still with that warmth in his eyes, that kindness that's always defined him. But something was different. There was a new sharpness to his gaze. "Hey Mom," he said, his voice tight. "Lena, I'm glad you came. I've been trying to figure out how to say this, ... I glanced at Lena, who stood right behind me. She gave me a small nod, her eyes wide but ready. "Mom, Lena," Ethan started. "I've been thinking a lot about everything, about how different things have felt lately. And, ... I've realized something." He paused, running a hand through his hair. "There's something I need to ask you both, and I need the truth. I need you to tell me what's been going on." Lena looked at me, her expression a mix of terror and determination. She stepped forward, swallowing hard. "Ethan, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you a very long time ago." Ethan's brow furrowed. "What is it?" Lena took a shaky breath, the words trembling as they came out. "Ethan, I have a son. His name is Isaac. I had him before we met, and I've kept him a secret from you. I never told you, because I was afraid. I thought you wouldn't accept me. I thought you wouldn't accept him." The silence in that room was suffocating. It felt like all the air had been sucked out. Ethan just stood there, frozen, his face completely pale. He looked like the ground had just vanished from under his feet. "You, ... have a son," he repeated, the words just hanging there. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me?" "Lena," her voice broke as she whispered, "I didn't know how. I was so scared, Ethan. I thought if you knew, you'd leave me. I thought you'd never look at me the same way again. And I couldn't lose you." Ethan just stared, his face a whirlwind of confusion, hurt, and disbelief. He looked from Lena to me, as if searching for an answer, for some kind of sense in all of this. "I don't know what to say," he finally managed, his voice hoarse. "I need time to process this." Lena's hands trembled. "I'm so sorry, Ethan. I never, ever wanted to hurt you. I need to think," he said, his voice barely a whisper. He turned and walked into the other room, leaving us standing alone in the hallway, the world tilting on its axis. I turned to Lena, feeling the immense weight of the moment pressing down on us. "He needs time," I said softly. "We've both been carrying this for too long, but we can't run from the truth anymore. We just have to give him the time he needs." Tears welled up in Lena's eyes. "I just hope he can forgive me. I never meant to hurt him. I never meant to hurt anyone." The door clicked shut behind Ethan, and in that deafening silence, I knew this was only the beginning. The truth was out. There was no going back. But the hardest part was still to come, not for Lena, but for Ethan. How would he handle this? Could their love possibly survive a betrayal this deep? I didn't have any of the answers, but I knew one thing for sure. Nothing would ever be the same again. But maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what they both needed to finally move forward. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've been through something similar, or just want to see what happens next, the next few days felt like I was living in a fog. My bakery was quieter than usual, not because of the customers, but because of me. I went through the motions of rolling dough, pulling trays from the oven, and glazing pastries, but everything felt distant, as if I was watching my own life through a veil. I couldn't stop thinking about Ethan's face when Lena confessed to him. The shock, the confusion, the rawness of it all. I knew his heart was breaking, but I didn't know how to help him piece it back together. Lena didn't call me for 2 days. I knew she was waiting for Ethan to reach out, but it didn't happen. Every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was her, but it was always someone from the bakery asking for an order, or a regular asking if I had any cinnamon rolls left. By the 3rd day, I couldn't stay away any longer. I needed to see Lena, to make sure she was okay. I needed to know how Ethan was doing, too, even though I was afraid of what he might say, or if he'd even want to speak to me. I drove over to their house that afternoon, my hands tight on the wheel, my stomach flipping like it was the first time I'd ever driven that road. The familiar street, the familiar house, but everything had changed. My thoughts kept circling back to what Lena had said. Isaac, her son. I hadn't seen him, hadn't even known he existed. How had this secret been buried for so long? And why had Lena kept it from Ethan? As I turned onto Elm Street, I saw Ethan's truck in the driveway. My heart skipped. Maybe this was it. Maybe he was ready to talk. I parked and hesitated for a moment, my breath catching in my throat. The front door opened just as I was about to knock. Ethan stood in the doorway, his eyes bloodshot and tired. He looked thinner, as if the weight of everything had physically drained him. "Mom," he said, his voice rough. "Can we talk?" My chest tightened. "Of course, baby." He stepped aside, letting me in. The house was quieter than usual. No laughter, no clinking of dishes from the kitchen. It felt hollow, like something precious had been broken, and no one knew how to fix it. Ethan motioned for me to sit at the kitchen table. Lena wasn't there. I glanced around, the silence heavy between us. He sat down across from me, his fingers tapping nervously on the wood. "I've been thinking a lot," he said, looking down at the table, as if the answer could be found in the grain of the oak. "About Lena, about Isaac, about everything." I nodded, not sure what to say. He was struggling. I could feel it. "I know, son. I know it's a lot to take in. But Lena, I don't even know where to begin," he interrupted, looking up at me with a mixture of frustration and disbelief. "How could she keep this from me, Mom? How could she keep a son from me, a child?" I didn't have an answer for that. How could I? All I could do was sit there and listen as Ethan's emotions spilled out like a dam breaking, and I had to let the flood happen. I don't know how to look at her now, he said, his voice trembling. I don't know who she is anymore. I've been building my life with someone I thought I knew, someone who I thought trusted me, but now, he wiped his face with his hands. Now everything feels like a lie. I felt a deep, aching pain for my son, but I also felt it for Lena. She hadn't meant for any of this to happen, and yet here they were, two people bound together by love, but torn apart by secrets and fear. Ethan, I said gently, leaning forward, this isn't easy. It's not going to be easy. But I want you to think about one thing. Why did she keep this from you? He didn't answer immediately. His shoulders slumped, the weight of the question pressing him deeper into his chair. I know why, I said softly. Lena was afraid. She was scared that if she told you, you'd leave her. She was afraid you wouldn't accept her, or the son she had to give up. I know it's hard, but she didn't tell you out of fear that the truth would make you love her less. Ethan's face crumpled, and for a moment, I thought he might break down, but instead, he stood up, pacing back and forth. I should have known, he muttered. I should have seen something. I should have asked her. How could I be so blind? No one's blaming you, I said, my voice shaking with the emotion of it. No one's blaming you, Ethan, but what matters now is what happens next. You have to decide what you want from here. You have to decide if you can find a way to forgive Lena and forgive yourself. He stopped pacing and looked at me, his eyes red-rimmed, tired but clear. I don't know if I can, he whispered. I love her, Mom. I love her so much. But this is a huge thing. I can't just sweep it under the rug. And I don't know if I can trust her again. I sat back, my heart aching for both of them. Trust is a hard thing to rebuild. I won't pretend it's easy. But you have to remember, Lena's human. She made a mistake, but that doesn't mean she's the sum of that mistake. What she needs right now is you, your understanding, your patience. You've both been hurt, but if you love each other, that love is worth fighting for. Ethan didn't answer immediately. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing again, before finally stopping by the window. I could see him wrestling with himself, with the enormity of everything that had happened. I don't know if I can be the same person again, he murmured. I don't know if I can look at her the same way after all this. I stood up and walked over to him, placing my hand on his shoulder. Baby, sometimes you don't need to look at someone the same way. You just need to look at them with new eyes that see all of them, the good and the bad. You need to decide what kind of future you want with her. And if you decide you can't move forward together, then that's okay too. But don't let fear make the decision for you. He nodded slowly, his face softening. I don't want to lose her. I don't, but I need time, Mom, time to process it all. I need to think. That's okay, I said gently. Take your time. But remember, whatever happens, you're not alone in this. He sighed deeply and pulled me into a hug, holding me tightly. Thanks, Mom. I don't know what I'd do without you. I hugged him back, feeling the weight of everything settle on my chest. It wasn't over. It wasn't even close to being over. But maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward. A way to heal. If Ethan was willing to give it a chance. If Lena was willing to face her fears. That night, when I returned to my own house, I sat down with a glass of wine, staring at the flickering candlelight on the table. My mind wandered back to Lena, back to that first moment she told me about Isaac, the rawness of her confession. I hadn't expected this. I hadn't expected a secret like that to break everything apart. But then, I thought about what Ethan had said. He wasn't ready to forgive, not yet, but he still loved her, and that, at least, was something. It was something worth holding on to. Thanks so much for listening to my story today. If you've ever been through something similar, you know how hard it can be. A week passed, and the silence in the house had become something I couldn't ignore any longer. Ethan was quiet, distant, not just from Lena, but from me too. I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen him really smile, and it broke my heart. The world had shifted under his feet, and there was no getting back to the easy, carefree days before the truth came out. Lena, on the other hand, seemed to be waiting, holding her breath. She called me every day, her voice full of hope one minute and despair the next. She was desperate to make things right, but I could feel the walls between her and Ethan still standing tall, thick, and seemingly insurmountable. I'd given him space. I'd encouraged Lena to do the same. But now, I could see the way Ethan's shoulders hunched when he came home, how he was no longer present, not as engaged with the world around him. It was as if the spark inside him had been extinguished, and I had to wonder, would he ever be the same? Would their relationship ever recover? The hardest thing, I realized, was not knowing what would happen next. Would they heal? Would they find their way back to each other? Or had this betrayal been the end of something they couldn't come back from? It was on a quiet Sunday afternoon when I finally got the call I had been waiting for. The phone rang. A soft, hesitant sound that startled me. I glanced at the screen. Lena. I hesitated, my fingers gripping the phone before I answered. Hello, I said, my voice soft, unsure of what I was about to hear. Mara, Lena's voice came through, fragile but clear. I think Ethan's ready to talk. My heart raced. Really, I said, sitting up straighter in my chair, the weight of her words sinking in. Yes, she replied, a mix of relief and nervousness in her tone. He wants to meet. He says he's thought a lot about everything, and he's ready to hear me out. I think we can finally talk. I felt a tight knot loosen in my chest, but another part of me felt a new surge of worry. Are you sure he's ready? I mean, it's been a lot for both of you. This won't be easy, Lena, I know, she said, her voice breaking a little. But I love him, Mara. I need him to understand. I need him to know everything, all of it, no more lies. I felt the weight of her words and nodded. Even though she couldn't see me, I'll be there. Whatever happens, I'll be there. I ended the call, my hands trembling slightly. It was happening. After days of silence, after weeks of fear, Ethan was ready to face the truth, and that was the first step. But it was only the beginning. There was still so much pain to work through. I arrived at their house that afternoon, my mind a jumble of thoughts. I wasn't sure what I was expecting. I wasn't too sure if Ethan and Lena would find a way to repair the rift between them, or if their world had been irrevocably altered. But I knew one thing. They had to try. When I pulled up to the house, the front door was slightly open, light from the kitchen spilling onto the porch. I could hear voices inside, soft, muted. I hesitated for a moment before stepping onto the porch and knocking lightly on the door. Lena opened it, her face pale but hopeful. She stepped aside, allowing me in. He's in the living room, she said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. I nodded and followed her inside, my heart thudding in my chest. I wasn't sure what I was walking into, but I knew that this was a moment of reckoning. Ethan was waiting in the living room, his posture stiff, his eyes tired, but there was something else there now, a flicker of something, perhaps hope, or perhaps the desire to heal. He looked up when I entered, his face softening slightly when he saw me. Mom, he said, his voice rough. Thanks for coming. I smiled at him, but there was a sadness in my eyes that I couldn't hide. Of course, baby, I'm here for both of you. Lena stood by the door, her hands twisting nervously in front of her. Ethan's gaze flickered between her and me. There was still a distance between them, a gulf that only truth and time could bridge. Ethan took a deep breath and motioned to the couch. Let's sit, he said. We need to talk. All of us. I sat down first, glancing between the two of them, my heart in my throat. Lena sat beside me, her hands trembling. Ethan sat across from us, his elbows resting on his knees, his gaze fixed on the floor, as if he were searching for the right words. I've been thinking, he began, his voice low. A lot of things have happened over the past few days, and I'll admit, I've been angry, hurt, confused. I thought I knew everything about Lena, about us. And then, this bombshell dropped, and I didn't know what to do with it. He stopped, looking at Lena for the first time since we'd sat down. But the truth is, I don't want to lose you. Lena's eyes filled with tears as she looked at him. Ethan, she whispered, I'm so sorry. I should have told you. I should have been honest with you from the start. I was scared. I was so afraid that you wouldn't accept me, or Isaac, or the person I used to be. But I love you. I need you to know that." Ethan swallowed hard, his gaze softening. "I know you love me, and I love you. But this has shaken me to my core. I don't know if I can just move on from this. It's not just about Isaac, it's about trust. And trust, once it's broken, is hard to rebuild." There was a long silence. The air was thick with the weight of their shared pain, their shared history. I could feel the tension, but I could also feel the tenderness. It was the quiet kind of pain, the kind that doesn't demand answers, but simply wants to be heard. Finally, Lena spoke again. "Ethan, I can't change what's happened, but I can promise you this. I'll do whatever it takes to rebuild your trust. I'll work every day to prove that I'm here, that I'm worthy of your love." Ethan nodded slowly. "I know, and I'm not saying it's going to be easy, Lena, but maybe, maybe we can try. We can try to rebuild this, to rebuild us. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm willing to give it a shot." Lena's shoulders seemed to release a tension I hadn't even realized she'd been holding. "You mean it." "I mean it," Ethan said softly. I watched them, and I realized something in that moment. Love isn't about perfection. It isn't about having all the answers. It's about trying. It's about the willingness to fight for each other, even when the road ahead is uncertain. In the weeks that followed, I watched as Ethan and Lena began the difficult process of rebuilding. It wasn't easy, and there were moments of doubt and pain, but they were both trying. And in that trying, there was a quiet kind of healing, not fast, not clean, but real. Lena finally introduced Ethan to Isaac. I was there when it happened, and I watched the way Ethan's face softened when he met the little boy Isaac, with his dark curls and wide, curious eyes. He was so much like Lena, but he was also a part of Ethan now. And for the first time, I could see that maybe, just maybe, this family could come together. Ethan wasn't perfect. Neither was Lena. But they were willing to face the misses, the mistakes, the truths. And that, I think, was the most important thing. As for me, I took a step back. I let them navigate their own path, trusting that they had the strength to figure things out. It wasn't always easy to watch, to see my son hurt, to see Lena struggle, but in the end, I knew this was their journey. And whatever happened, I would be there to support them, to guide them, and to remind them that love, in its purest form, is about forgiveness, understanding, and finding peace even in the midst of the storm. As I sit here, looking out my window, at the quiet evening, I can't help but reflect on the journey Lena, Ethan, and I have been through. It's been a difficult one, full of secrets, heartache, and hard truths. But it's also been a journey of growth, understanding, and ultimately healing. We often think of love as something that's meant to be simple, effortless, but the truth is, love is messy. It's imperfect, and sometimes we hurt the ones we love the most, not because we want to, but because we're afraid of rejection, afraid of judgment, afraid that the people closest to us won't accept us for who we really are. Lena's fear almost tore her family apart, and Ethan's pain nearly took him down a path he wasn't ready to walk. But despite the hurt, despite the anger, they found their way back to each other, not by erasing the past, but by acknowledging it, accepting it, and then deciding to move forward together. And as for me, well, I've learned that being a mother means knowing when to step in and knowing when to step back. Sometimes, the most powerful thing we can do for the ones we love is to give them the space they need to heal, to grow, and to find their own way. So, as I reflect on everything that's happened, I'm reminded that the most important thing in any relationship is trust. Trust isn't built overnight. It takes time, patience, and a whole lot of vulnerability. But once you build it, it's something that can weather the storm, even when the winds are strong. To anyone watching this, I ask, have you ever had to rebuild trust after it was broken? Have you ever been faced with a secret that threatened everything you knew? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Tell me in the comments. Share your story. Let's continue this conversation. Because we all know that healing is never a straight line, but it's always worth it. If you've learned something from this story, if it's touched you in some way, don't forget to like and subscribe. And remember, you're never alone in your journey. We're all walking this path together. Pause. It's funny how we imagine our lives will turn out. I always pictured family dinners filled with easy laughter, holidays without a hint of tension. I never imagined a secret so large it would cast a shadow over everything, making us strangers in our own home. When the truth about Lena's past came out, it felt like an earthquake. The ground beneath us shifted. And I didn't know if our family's foundation was strong enough to survive the aftershocks. Ethan retreated into himself. His silence, a wall I couldn't seem to break through. And Lena, she was so consumed by her own guilt and fear that she could unsee the pain she was causing. I remember one night, I found Ethan just sitting in the dark in his room. I asked him what was wrong, and all he said was, "How can you love someone who lied to you?" His question hit me hard. It wasn't just about Lena. It was about me, about our whole family. How *** you love someone through the imperfections, through the mistakes. For a while, I didn't have an answer. I was angry, too. I felt betrayed, not just by Lena's secret, but by the years of silence. But looking at my son, so lost and hurt, I knew that anger wasn't the solution. It was just another wall between us. That's when I realized that my role wasn't to fix them. It wasn't to force forgiveness or demand apologies. My role was to hold the space for them to find their own way. To let them be angry, to let them be hurt, and to just be there, reminding them that my love, at least, was unconditional. It was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, to watch my children in pain, and not be able to take it away. But sometimes, love isn't about fixing. It's about witnessing. It's about being the lighthouse in the storm, not trying to calm the waves yourself. Slowly, tentatively, things began to change. It started with small gestures. Ethan leaving a cup of tea outside Lena's door. Lena cooking Ethan's favorite meal, even if they ate in silence. These weren't grand apologies, but they were acknowledgments. They were tiny threads of connection being woven back together. The silence in the house started to feel less heavy, less charged with unspoken resentment. It became a quiet space where healing could begin. They started talking, not about the big secret, not at first. They talked about movies, about school, about anything and everything else. They were rebuilding their friendship, their sibling bond, from the ground up. And I watched from a distance, giving them the room they needed. I learned that true strength as a parent isn't in having all the answers. It's in trusting your children to find their own, and trusting that the love you've instilled in them is strong enough to guide them back to each other. The journey to rebuilding trust is a marathon, not a sprint. There were setbacks, moments of doubt, and old wounds that flared up unexpectedly. But with each challenge they overcame together, their bond grew stronger. They learned that their relationship wasn't defined by the lie, but by how they chose to move forward from it. They chose honesty. They chose vulnerability. They chose each other. Seeing them now, laughing together in the kitchen, or bickering over something silly, my heart feels full. It's a different kind of happiness than the one I had imagined all those years ago. It's not a perfect, flawless happiness. It's something deeper, more resilient. It's a happiness that has been tested by fire and come out stronger on the other side. They didn't just repair what was broken. They built something new, something more authentic. And that's the real lesson here, isn't it? That our relationships, our families, aren't fragile things that shatter at the first sign of trouble. They are living, breathing things that can be wounded, yes, but can also heal and grow in ways we never thought possible. The scars they carry are not signs of weakness, but symbols of their resilience. They are a testament to the fact that they faced the darkness and chose to find their way back to the light, together. So, if you're going through a storm in your own life, if a secret has shaken your world, I want you to hold on to that hope. Healing is possible. Rebuilding is possible. It requires courage, patience, and an enormous amount of grace, both for others and for yourself. It won't be easy, and the path won't always be clear. But the love that connects us is a powerful force. It can guide us through the darkest of times and lead us back to a place of understanding and peace. Don't ever give up on it. Thank you for letting me share this piece of our story with you. Your presence here, listening, means more than you know. If this resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more conversations like this. Remember to be kind to yourselves and to each other. We're all just doing our best. Until next time.